Good morning. Anybody see Mrs. Ganung? I'm waiting for the bell to arrive. Here you see, right here you see the bell of mindfulness. Some of you have taken a class with me or know anything about the Buddhist religion, which is really a psychology. It's a way of liberating the mind from false views. It's a philosophy. It's many things. But there's this bell, which is symbolic of the Buddhist religion. And now it's, many of you even have them or know people that have them. It's become an international symbol. And the whole idea, Buddhism, the word Bud comes from the Sanskrit root. And Mrs. Ganung is here. You don't have the bell. It's okay. We can meditate. As I'll explain right here. So, are you sleepwalking? The root word of Bud comes from the Sanskrit language, which some of you may know is the ancient sacred language of India. People at Harvard actually get degrees in Sanskritology. But it means, are you awake? And so the idea is implying, are we sleepwalking through life? The bell of mindfulness is a call to wake up. Wake up from our slumbers as we're walking through. You might be going through a great school like Taft, into another great school, college, and into a career, but you still might be asleep to your true essential nature. The thing about the bell, it's not just ringing the bell. The bell is one way, a bell of mindfulness, but birds, trees, a baby's smile, your sweetheart's eyes, meaning there are multitudes of bells of mindfulness, things in life that are beautiful and precious that can wake us up to the deeper nature of our existence. So you can think of others that might be bells of mindfulness. So we don't have the wonderful sound of the bell, but I'm going to ask us just to take a moment, if we could just sit straight, and your back straight, feet on the floor, close our eyes for a minute, relax your shoulders, and breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth, and just settle into a nice breathing pattern. So let us close our eyes, pretend we hear the sound of the bell right now. Use our imagination. Here we go. Just see if we can be silent. I've been in places with the Dalai Lama and Thich Nhat Hanh where 4,000 people, you could hear a pin drop. Let's just, for 1 minute, let us be in silence. Ding. Okay. I guess it's kind of hard to do. All right, so I'm going to move on because that's just a little introduction. I want to share with you the next slide. Tristan, thanks. Really important concept here. You may not have heard of it. The word interbeing. It's entered the vocabulary in the last 2 decades. It was a phrase coined by the Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh, who's 87 years old, been a world-class teacher for 60 years, taught at Princeton in the early 60s, Columbia, and friends with Martin Luther King Jr., and he is like one of the great leaders, spiritual teachers in the world. But he talks about interbeing. We inter-are. It's entered into the language. We inter-are with one another. It's related to interrelatedness, interconnectedness. And that if I were to stand here and hold up a sheet of paper and ask you and I've done this in class, what do you see when you look at it? And sometimes you say, well, I see some lines or there's writing on it if there is any. And then after a while, someone will say, I see a tree. And then I'll go, okay, further. We see a tree, we see a cloud, we see the rain, we see the soil, we see the lumberjack who cut the tree down, we see the sawmill, we see the breakfast that the lumberjack had, and we begin to see that everything in the world, in the universe, is interconnected, inter-are, that the piece of paper is not possible without all of those things. And the same is absolutely true of you and me. We are not possible without our parents, without our grandparents, without our community, without everything around us, without the soil, without the oxygen. All these things we are interconnected, we inter-are with. And that's the term is interbeing. So the next one. So we have one of our greatest scientists of all time, Albert Einstein, talking about interconnectedness. A human being is part of the whole, called by us the universe. We experience ourselves, our thoughts, our feelings as something separate from the rest. This is an optical delusion of consciousness. This delusion is a kind of prison for us. And so there is the prison cell over there. And we put ourselves in a tiny prison. I always say this, because we think that we're these little entities walking around in the world, pursuing our own goals, building our own empire, pursuing our self-interest, unrelated to things and events and people around the world. Well, it's not true. It's all an optical delusion. We are deeply interconnected with everything that goes on around us. The next slide. Thanks, Tristan. Beautiful place. Now here, I've never operated one of these before, so let's see. We push a button on here. Here, this beautiful waterfall. There's a place that's dear to my heart. It's Iceland. And I went there 6 years ago. My wife and I fell in love with it. So my son graduated from the University of Hawaii. We went back a few years ago, did a family vacation, drove around Iceland. We went to this incredible waterfall. But here, one of my favorite naturalists is John Muir. He says, all our expressions of one love, we all flow from one fountain, one soul. And if you know, you have to read John Muir because he is literally the father of our national park systems, founder of the Sierra Club, battling a century ago to stop people from cutting down the redwoods and sequoias, and was battling against this huge dam that went into the Hetchy Dam near Yosemite, that after the 1906 San Francisco earthquake, they needed water in San Francisco, so a lot of powerful business interests, politicians overruled John. Unfortunately, Teddy Roosevelt and then Woodrow Wilson kind of turned their back on him, and they created the reservoir. But 2 years after he died brokenhearted, but 2 years after his death, this huge environmental movement was born, National Park System. So he was a forerunner in protecting the wilderness. And beautiful. You got to go to Iceland if you haven't been there. Next slide. Here's another John Muir quote. Most people the world are not in it. They have no conscious sympathy for relationship to anything about them. They are separate and rigidly alone like marbles and polished stone. See, we're on top of the world, and rather than, you know the difference between being on top of the world rather than in it, down in nature, feeling that deep connection. There really is a problem in the way we view it. I think this is a problem in Western philosophy, Western science, and Western religion. And we're starting to emerge out of it because a new story is starting to be told. The old paradigm is drifting away, but we're in between stories. We're starting to tell a new story. We're starting to see our relationship to nature in a new way. It used to be, in religious terms, we think of ourselves as stewards. We lord it over the earth. We're stewards of the earth. We're the apex of creation. In scientific terms, we want to preserve the earth because it has uses for us, medicinal uses and so forth. But the real truth is that John Muir sense, and I think it's true, that we're just an integral part of it. We're no more intrinsically important or value than the animals and the plants and the trees and everything in this universe. We're all interconnected in this. And we start to see the world in a different way when we're in it and part of it rather than on top of it. And so we can be sort of sitting in a house looking out the window and thinking, well, some people are into nature, but that's not really my thing. Well, you are nature. You are part of it. This is your world. This is your universe. So come down off of it, the top of the world, and come into it. Next slide, please. Here's a quote, because we're moving toward Martin Luther King weekend. And King was way ahead of his time. 50 years ago, King was not only talking about, the civil rights movement and the Vietnam War. He's talking about how we are all caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied into a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. Whatever affects us, whatever happens on the other side of the earth, all wars taking place, climate change, a whole range of things, it affects us directly. And King was also one to point out, close with my wonderful teacher, Thich Nhat Hanh, 50 years ago, they were working together to end the Vietnam War. And King said about Thich Nhat Hanh, he says, I see nobody more worthy of a Nobel Peace Prize than this gentle monk from Vietnam. Next slide. Thanks. Beautiful tropical island. I used to live in Hawaii, so I can get feelings for that. But this is an English poet from the 16th century, John Donne. You know this probably from your English classes. No man is an island. No man is an island entire of itself. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. We don't exist, again. We don't exist. We hear referring it from a poet, a satirist, saying we don't exist in isolation. Britain can't exist in isolation from the main continent of Europe or the rest of the world. We are interconnected with one another. And here is a basketball player. And he goes in for the jam after this. I'm not sure that I exist, Sean's saying as he's dribbling that ball. I am all the writers that I've ever read, all the people I have met, all the women that I have loved, all the cities I have visited, all the basketball players I have played against. That's an Argentinian poet, really interesting guy, an existentialist, and that we are shaped by everything around us. All people, all events create who we are. Next, please. And then we just see some more pictures. Here you are. And Super Sunday. All the people, the experiences we have here at Taft shape our character, our personality, our destiny, our spiritual, our moral, our ethical lives. Next, and there's a similar one coming up. Here we are again. And moving on. It's a great picture, you guys, really. This is the web of life here. And see that big garden spider? They're not actually that big, but everybody's seen them. They're about that big. They're about 2 or 3 inches long. We had them in our backyard in Maine. I remember with the kids, we'd catch them in late August. They'd be out there in this field going down toward the ocean, these beautiful webs, these giant spiders. And you ever know you come upon a spider web and you touch it, what happens? It reverberates. The whole thing moves, just touching one part of that web. Humankind is not woven the web of life. We are but a strand within it. Whatever we do to the web, we do to ourselves. All things are bound together. Things are connected. Chief Seattle probably didn't actually write this, but many Native Americans have written similar things. There are great leaders right now, Oren Lyons Onondaga from upstate New York, Winona LaDuke from the Ojibwe in northern Minnesota. They're on the circuit. They speak at colleges, universities, all over the world, talk about the same things. We're part of the web of life. There's so much wisdom that we're losing from indigenous cultures, whether it's the San people in the Kalahari, the Guanaré in Brazil, in Argentina, in the rainforest, or the indigenous peoples of the Aborigines of Australia, or our own native traditions here in this country. We cannot lose our connection with this wisdom. Next thing. Really important here. You don't know much about this probably. The Net of Indra. Now, in the Hindu mythology, Indra was a god, and Hindu's counterpart would be Zeus, the god of coming in with thunderbolts, the god of rain and lightning. So Indra is in the Vedic scriptures, some of the oldest scriptures in the world. But there are these stories, both in the Vedic scriptures and in the Buddhist sutras, about this thing called the Net of Indra, which scientists find very interesting. So I want you to envision a vast net spread across the universe. At each juncture lies a jewel. Each jewel reflects the other jewels in this cosmic matrix. Every jewel represents an individual life form, atom, cell, or unit of consciousness. Each jewel, in turn, is intrinsically and intimately connected to all the others. Thus, a change in one gem is reflected in all the others. And we have another picture of that. You can, the bigger picture. So you and we're all in this net. Just imagine this three-dimensional net spanning out into infinity in the universe. And each one of us is a jewel. It's very similar to a hologram. And you talk more about that at another time, how a lot of quantum physicists are talking now that the universe may be a giant hologram. So that's why they like this image, this metaphorical, symbolic, mythological image called the Net of Indra. But we're all in it. We're all jewels, gems, in this great net, and we reflect one another. So we are a composite of everything in this net. So something on the other side of infinity can in an instant be reflected in who we are. It's just like the giant spider web, but extends out, and anything that happens in this net affects anything else, everything else. we have our own individuality, but yet at the same time, we're a reflection of everything else that is in this net. So how we act, how we think, how we speak, how we act, all affects this giant net. So we're not little isolated entities separate from one another. What do we have next? We have mindfulness, interbeing, and interconnectedness. Alex here, cleaning up the river. What does it mean for us as individuals? What does it mean for us as a community at Taft? We realized just this terrible tragedy, and tonight we're having a little reflection and time to remember Zoe, and some are going to the funeral service tomorrow. We came together as a community because Zoe's death reminded us at a deeper level that we are deeply intertwined, interconnected, and she reminded us of what's most important in life: to love one another, to be kind, to be caring, to seek the greater good for everyone. So here, we're focusing on environmental issues, Martin Luther King Day, but the environment, the civil rights movement, human rights issues, social justice, taking care of the planet, all these things are one part of one big package. And so it's directly related to what we're doing here. And there you are, you guys doing a wonderful job here. Cleaning up, we have our Service Day in October. I think we've had some great speakers here this year talking about environmental issues, from Dr. Suzuki to Dr. Carl Safina. And we're going to continue at Martin Luther King Day, and then we'll have something on Earth Day in the spring. But we want to think about it throughout the year. It's not just one year we're focused on ecological, environmental issues. It's a whole way of thinking. It's a whole way of being in the world. Things are changing dramatically. This is a Copernican revolution. This is a paradigm shift. We're changing our way of viewing the world, viewing one another, how we live in it, how we care for it, how we care for one another. So I want you to think this way, entertain this side, maybe look into what the concept of interbeing, of interconnectedness. Think about the myth. It's been a myth. We've grown out of it, the myth of separation, that we are disconnected from one another, that we are somehow disconnected from the earth. And when that happens, we think we can use things for our own advantage. We look at a tree, and we think, I could use that for wood, I could build a porch with that, my house, maybe it bears fruit. There are lots of uses in that tree. But no, this way of thinking says that a tree has intrinsic value in and of itself, not extrinsic. I think we've been operating on the extrinsic model. Things only have value, external value, but this has intrinsic value of itself. So yeah, we may use part of the tree, but we want to have rituals around it and show gratitude and a sense of reverence toward everything we use in this world. And the way we use people in our lives, the kind of jobs you'll have, the kind of businesses you'll own, who are the people that work for you? How are you taking care of their lives? Are you mindfully aware of what their life situation is like? Those people who are bringing you great wealth in your business. Thinking about where we're investing our money. What is it doing? What are the companies doing that I'm investing my money in? Yeah, I've got great returns each quarter, but what are they doing around the world, to the environment? What's the situation with human rights in this and that country? So this is an idea. I want to continue this theme as how it relates to our practical lives at a later date. So thank you very much. Have a great morning. Take care.